Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm so excited to be with you all here tonight. We're in week 6 of #struggles. We're talking about how to follow Jesus in a selfie-centered world, and tonight is, I'm just incredibly excited. We talk about something that I think is very relevant for us all. And so, as we're getting ready for this backpacking trip, we're talking about some things about this trip that are going to be a little uncomfortable. We're talking about like how you go to the wilderness, right? And you have to like go to the bathroom in the wilderness, right? That's kind of like something that's uncomfortable, right? I don't know if like you've ever done that before, but you are in the wilderness and there's no toilets like there, and so the only thing to do is to go to the bathroom in the wilderness, just like natural style here. And it's kind of weird. You guys all have very weird looks on your face right now. You're trying to like think through this, but the reality is like this is kind of part of the trip, and what part of what you guys, those of you who are going, signed up for. And I'm not excited about that part, but I am excited for the holistic, like the trip as a whole. I'm excited for it. But as I think about some of that, and as my mind keeps thinking, like I was just kind of keep going with me for a second. I was thinking about toilet paper. And I was thinking about toilet paper, and I was like, you know, like, I really like... Has anybody ever TP'd someone before? I would quite. Like, has anybody... Come on, let's see. Raise them nice and high. Okay. Some people are like, you're like, oh, man, I'm embarrassed. Okay, I want to see, okay. I want to see, like, how much money has someone spent on toilet paper? Like, I want to see, have you spent over $50 on toilet paper to TP someone's house? Oh, okay, a lot. Over $100. No, okay, so like, oh, someone in the back just spent over $100 to TP someone's house, right? So I think, is that Taylor's house? That's some expensive toilet paper. So as I think about TPing, I think about this idea of it's kind of fun to TP people, right? Like the idea, I don't know if you have no idea what I'm talking about. We're talking about like throwing toilet paper on a tree or on a front yard of someone's house to kind of pull a prank. Like it's kind of a fun way to kind of get at someone, and it's fun, I think, because they don't see you doing it. Right? Like you can go to someone's house and you can take the toilet paper and you can chuck it, and they have no idea that you're doing it. You're doing it, and then eventually, usually it's at night, and they wake up the next morning and all of a sudden they look out the front door and their whole house is white. Right? And they're like, I went to bed and there was green grass, and now there's white grass. Like I live in Elk Grove, but it looks like snow is everywhere. Has anybody ever experienced it? Has anybody gotten TP? Oh, you've gotten TP. Wow, Caleb has gotten TP. Tyler, Callie, yeah, we have gotten TP. I remember when I was in high school, I walked out one day and my dad was very, very angry. My dad was like very, very upset. And I was like, Dad, like I don't understand. I mean, we're only like 30 minutes into the day and you're already so upset at me. What could I possibly have done? And he like kind of just points to the front door. And so I walk outside and toilet paper is everywhere. But what's worse is our cars got hit hard. Like my vehicle, I remember my vehicle got covered in this just nasty stuff. It's not meant to be on vehicles. I remember him being upset about this because this is vandalism, this is messing with someone's property, this is messing with someone's belongings. And so as I think about TPing and this idea of like, it's a fun thing you can do to get at a friend, but what happens often is people take it too far. And so people go into a situation and they want to throw toilet paper on someone's house, and instead they make bad decisions and they go too far. And they put other things like whether it's keying vehicles, whether it's Vaseline over the house, whether it's some of these different things that people do on houses that are terrible, and it's too far. So we like to have fun and we like to go and TP houses and do some of these fun things, but it is ridiculous when you then mess with someone's belongings. And the reality is it's just too far. Like we can have fun with this, but there's a level of like, you can't go that far. I think toilet paper is fun. It takes a while to get out of the tree. It's something we can laugh about. And I can look back and say, it was fun. And well, it wasn't fun, but it was kind of a cool time to say, hey, I got like slammed by some of my friends, and I got toilet paper everywhere. And it's like that fun thing, but the reality is there was parts of it that were too far. It's important to realize that there are boundaries. There are the reality is when we have actions, there are consequences for those actions. But the reality is it's easy to go to someone's house and to TP their house because they're not looking. And it's easy to do things to their house that you think you won't regret because they're not looking. In fact, it's easy when someone's not looking you in the face, it's easy to do things to them or about them. Are you following what I'm saying? Like, it's easy to gossip about someone when they're not in front of your face. It's easy to do something bad to someone's house when they're not looking because the reality is they're maybe inside of the house or they're away. But think about that for a second, is would you actually do that if they were standing there watching you? I mean, again, there are boundaries here. And in the same way, the words that we speak and the things that we say are important. And we can have fun, we can be serious, we can laugh. And there's all these different kinds of things we can communicate to people and about people. But when someone's not in front of us, we tend to think it doesn't really matter. I mean, if someone's not in front of me, I can say whatever I want about them. That it doesn't matter because as long as they don't hear it from my mouth, it's okay. See, for the first time in history, we now have the opportunity to communicate things virtually, like online. We now have the opportunity to say things about people on social media, on text messages, on things that we say, okay, as long as it's not coming out of my mouth, and it's as long as it's not to that person, I'm okay. In fact, I can say anything I want as long as it's not directed at that person and as long as it's not in front of that person. But the reality is we put these things on social media. We text these things. We communicate these things in whatever manner that looks like, and they are immediate and they are permanent. And sometimes now in today's world, they're even anonymous. And the reality is we pick up our phone and we think it's okay to text something or post something about someone else, but the reality is that's not. Even though you don't feel the awkwardness because they're not in front of you, the reality is you still are saying those things and you're still communicating those things. See, guys, the reality is we are communicating beings. Like we communicate every day, every minute of our lives. Everything that you do, in fact, even as you sit in that chair, you're communicating something to me. I can tell some of you guys are totally listening. And I can tell just by looking at your face right now that some of you guys are kind of checked out right now. I can literally tell without a word coming out of your mouth that some of you guys are like, who is this man? What is he talking about? What is social media? No, I'm just kidding. But I can tell by just your faces without a word coming out of your mouth. See, the reality is, guys, everything that we do communicates something. And what I want to argue tonight is that communication is important, but we also need to be careful. We need to be careful communicators. In fact, God has created us to communicate to those around us. We are made to communicate, but we are called to do so carefully. Because of the things that the way my eyes look, what comes out of my mouth, my facial expressions, what I do with my hands, what I do with my body, everything that I do communicates something. And so we have a job to communicate things to other people. And we choose what to communicate and we choose how to communicate. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever been on your phone? Have you ever texted someone or posted something and you had good intent? Maybe you texted a friend of yours, and you were saying a joke on your phone, and they take it completely the wrong way. Has this ever happened to you? Like you say you want to say something, you want to be funny, you want to be sarcastic, and then they read it right, and they're like, "Whoa, dude, calm down." And you were like, "Hey, I was just having fun. Like I was just messing around." Or you want to use humor in some way, and then they take it as you're trying to attack them in some way. I think the reality is, guys, text messaging and posting email on social media is dangerous. And I'm not here to shut you down. I'm not here to say get off of all these things. But all I'm trying to say is how can we be careful communicators in this day and age? How can we be Jesus followers and communicate in careful ways, knowing that everything we communicate matters? That in fact we communicate something on a phone or on social media, and the reality is they are not seeing you say this. That you can text someone something, and you can try to tell them something, and they can take it completely the wrong way. Because this is so important. In fact, in communication, seeing someone is important. Me being able to see your eyes and seeing your mouth and seeing your movements, like everything communicates. And so when all we do is pull out our phone and we type, that's all someone is seeing. That's all someone's getting. And with the help of emojis and all these different things that are fun, and we like to use them to communicate to people, the problem is we try to act like everything we say via text is like everything we're trying to communicate. And the reality is emojis do not completely say what you're trying to communicate. That in fact it's so much more than a little emoji at the end of a text message. Because everything that you are is meant to work together in your communication. How can we be careful communicators in this day and age? And I want to think through that together tonight. And I want to argue that it is super important what we communicate, how we communicate to others. That people can take us wrong. And in fact, we can abuse this, and we can actually use it to hurt other people. That because we don't have to stand face to face with them, we can actually hurt other people because it's easy and it's not so awkward. See, in fact, tonight I want to look at what God has to say about communication. What God has to say about being in community. And what this can look like as Jesus followers. I look in Proverbs chapter 6. And it's written for us that it says the Lord hates 6 things. It says there are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. And he lists them all. He lists these 7 things. So I want to read these things to you. It says in Proverbs chapter 6, it says haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil. And then catch these last 2. I think these are really relevant to us. It says God hates a false witness who pours out lies. And it says God hates a person who stirs up conflict in the community. It says that a false witness who pours out lies and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. It's people that lie. Say things that they do not really know. Say things that are not true. And it's a person who goes into a community of people and stirs up conflict. Uses their language, uses communication to stir up conflict. These are things that God says He hates. So this is something that we need to take seriously. As Jesus followers, we need to hear this and say, this is not something that we don't need to talk about, but in fact, this is something we do need to talk about. That communication is such a big part of our lives. And then we need to talk about how can we be careful communicators. So the reality is, as we talk about this idea of communication, I do not want to take this lightly. That words have an opportunity to tear someone down or lift someone up. We know this. I want to see a raise of hands if you've ever seen someone being bullied before. Can we just be honest for a second in the room? If you've ever seen someone get picked on, and you put your hands down. I want to see a raise of hands if you've ever seen someone bullied on social media or over a text message. You put your hands down. Thank you guys for being honest. The reality is, guys, I think we can all agree that this is very relevant to us and is very common. That in fact, the way that we communicate to people is important. And we have a choice in whether or not we do it in a good way or instead doing it in a bad way. We have a choice to pick people up or tear people down. It says that God hates people who stir up conflict in the community. It says that God hates people who are lying about things that are not true. So tonight, I want to ask you guys 3 sets of questions. We're going to go over 3 groups of questions tonight that I want you to think through. And what I want to encourage you guys to do is take this home with you. If you want to pull out your phone or you have paper to write these down, questions that you can ask yourself on a daily basis in every form of communication. I do not want to limit this to technology, but I want to include it actually with our speech and the way we present and communicate in our body language, and as well as in technology on our phone or on social media. So I have 3 groups of questions tonight that we're going to talk about. The first one says that ask yourself this first set of questions when communicating. Is what I'm about to say hurtful or helpful? Is what I'm about to say hurtful or helpful? Will this build others up or tear them down? Will this build others up or tear them down? And lastly, the last question as part 1, as the first set, is what's my intention behind what I'm trying to communicate? Asking why? What is your intention? So is what I'm about to say hurtful or helpful? Will this build others up or tear them down? And what is my intention behind what I'm about to communicate? See, Paul surely never dreamed about the technology that we have today. When Paul was around, there was a lot less than what we see and what we are constantly going into today. But the reality is, in Ephesians 4:29, he still directly addresses our tendency to gossip. So I'm going to read this to you. It says in Ephesians 4, chapter 29, it says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." Paul says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. He says, if you have something that is unwholesome to say, don't say it. If you don't have something good to say, don't say it. The first question is it helpful or hurtful? If it's hurtful, then why are we saying these words? And so often, especially in technology, especially on social media and text messages, it's easy to say something hurtful. It's easy to do something hurtful because it does not feel the pain, the awkwardness in the moment when they're not in front of you. But this is a question that you should continually ask yourself in the way that you communicate to others. Is it hurtful or is it helpful? Will this build others up or will it tear them down? Everything you say needs to be true, but everything that is true does not always need to be said. I want you to think through that for 1 second. I'm going to say this again. Everything that you say needs to be true, but everything that is true does not need to be said. There are simply things that you know to be true that are not for saying. Think about everything, you think about young kids, right? You think about young babies who see things and they point it out, right? You ever seen this before? A young kid who points something out that's super obvious and super awkward and should not be said. Yep. You ever seen this before? I remember, Callie, I did not ask for permission for it. I did not ask for permission for this story. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna say it because it doesn't embarrass you. It embarrasses me, okay? But Callie, I remember when she was younger, I had acne, and Callie would call me out all the time. She did not fail to point this out. And again, this is not downing her right now. This is not in no way is this hard on her. The reality is, as a younger kid, she saw something and pointed it out. Are you guys catching what I'm saying here? She saw something that was so obvious on my face that that didn't seem to and so she pointed out and made fun of me every single time. And it continued to lower my self-esteem every single day. But it was probably really good, right? But the reality is, you guys understand this idea that everything that we say must be true. But everything that is true is not needed to be said. is not needed to be communicated. We have the task of walking about this world and communicating in ways that represent Christ. So is it hurtful or is it helpful? Number 2, this is the second set of questions if you're writing these down. Second set of questions to ask yourself. Second set, it said, am I making private matters public? Am I making private matters public? Second question, am I about to share something that would be better handled privately? So in the second set, we have 2 questions. Number 1, am I making private matters public? And am I about to share something that would be better handled privately? Now, question for you, I'm wondering, have you ever had information that you've held that you could call blackmail, where like you know something about someone that's really awkward or really embarrassing about them, and you know that you are in a controlling situation here because they have to kiss up to you, because if they make you angry, you can just rat them out. Have you ever seen this? You ever know, you ever had blackmail on someone, right? Like, some of you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Like, so everybody's like looking at the person next to them like, I got blackmail on you, right? But the reality is, there are things in this world that are meant to be kept private. There are things in this world that are meant to be kept private, and sometimes these things get out, and they somehow come into the light, and it's weird, and it doesn't feel right. Why? Because they're not meant to be in the light. Or someone gets a hold of some information, and the reality is that information is not to be proclaimed from a stage or in a group of people, but rather this is meant to be handled one-on-one. That in fact, maybe you found yourself in a situation where you have found out information that is supposed to be handled privately. And the reality is, I think that we are called to handle these situations privately. They're private for a reason. And we're not called, and we're not supposed to take these things out into the public. You might have information on someone that is not meant to go anywhere. You might have information on someone that should not be shared with others. And instead of gossiping, instead of sharing these things are supposed to be kept private. Are there things that are meant to be kept private instead of public? And are you about to share something that would be better handled privately? That's the second set of questions. And third set, if you're following along with me. Third set, there is one question in this final set. It says, am I permitting, maybe even encouraging others to gossip? Are you permitting, are you even maybe, if you're to be honest, encouraging others into a gossiping situation? And I think what's important here is you've got to look at the people that you surround yourself with and the people that you come in contact with on a daily basis. Have you ever been in a situation where maybe you didn't gossip yourself, but you kind of are sort of encouraging it? Maybe you're not doing it, but you're also not stopping this. And see, this is a problem. You're not you may be permitting, you may even be encouraging others to gossip. In some way, you're throwing out the bait and you're letting them hold on to it. Maybe you're not the person physically gossiping in the situation, but you're kind of serving up the platter so that someone else can do the dishing out. Are you maybe even encouraging others to gossip? See, the reality is our words are powerful. Everything that we communicate is very powerful. And we need to be intentional as Christ followers in the way that we communicate to others. Jesus has given our mouth to us to communicate, and it's a beautiful thing. We get to love each other. We get to laugh with each other. We get to make jokes with each other. We get to have serious, hard conversations. We get to do all these amazing things together. And we get to be in communication with each other. But we simply have a choice on what we do with this. So are you going to choose to be a reckless communicator? Or are you going to choose to be a careful communicator? Are you going to choose to be an intentional communicator? And again, this isn't simply what comes out of your mouth, but what it comes out on social media and what comes out in a text message. See, guys, everything matters. And I want to help you understand that it's more important and it matters even more than you tend to think. As long as it's not coming out of my mouth, it's okay. But again, everything that you communicate, no matter in what way, matters. And we are called to be intentional, careful communicators. And actually, Cameron, you can come on up, dude. I'm going to invite him up right now as we start to close tonight. And I want to share a story with you guys. He's going to, I know everybody's like wondering. So he's just going to play in the background. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about story tonight. And this is a true story. And I want you to listen to the story as not as something that is make-believe, not as something that maybe never happened, but think about this story as something that is real, that in fact this story actually happened. And I want you to encourage you to take a moment to pause. Thinking this is a hard story to talk about, but it's real and it happened. On September 7th, 2012, a young teen posted a chilling video on YouTube. It was a 9-minute video on YouTube where this shy, vulnerable young girl slowly flipped through handwritten cards in which she starts to tell her story. And as we look at this story starts like many. In this story of this young girl who everything seems to be okay. She's shy. She's naive. She's a 7th grade girl. And she met this nice, flattering man on Facebook. It seems simple and it seems easy and it seems okay. She met this man on Facebook and he was charming. And he sent compliments. And it kind of seemed like everything that she wanted to hear. She was told that she was beautiful. But in fact, after a while, this man started making demands and asking things of her. See, what this man was doing is he started to work his way into her life, and then he started asking for inappropriate pictures. And she kept saying, no, this is not okay. I know better than this. My body is something beautiful that Jesus made, and I'm not going to do this. But in fact, what happened was, over a year, this man continually asked and continually demanded something. For a year, this went on, and eventually, she decided she would send this inappropriate picture online. She made a decision in this moment because she was seeking someone's attention. That she decided to share this picture. And she eventually came to find out that this would hurt her. See, what happened was this man, this friend, as she thought, started to demand other things of her. That in this moment, this man started asking her to go and do even other things that she did not want to do. She said, no, I'm not going to do these things. And so what she did is she stuck to what she said, and she said, I'm not going to give in, and I'm not going to go any further. But he started to threaten her. And he started to say, but if you don't, I will do things, and I will start to leak this picture that you sent me. And so what happens is he makes this demand of her, and she continues to say, no, I'm not going to do this, but he continues to threaten her. And then came Christmas break of 2010. The police showed up at her door at 4 a.m. with some very terrible news. That in fact, her picture was leaked. And this is a terrible, terrible situation. That this man took advantage of this young girl who gave him a chance. and he leaked something that should have never, ever been shared with this world. This is bad. And what's the problem is this is only the beginning. Because then it continued to happen. Then this picture started to leak to the public, and it started to rapidly circulate on the internet. And then she started going to school after that Christmas break, and everything was different. The guys started pointing at her and looking at her weirdly in the hall. The girls that she thought was once her best friends would no longer talk to her. The rumors flew throughout the school. She was in a terrible situation at this time. And she found herself in a very messy, tricky situation. She was totally hurt by other people. And so what happens is this family that she's a part of, they said, we're going to leave this. We're going to do the only thing we think we can do, and we're going to move away from this city, and we're going to move across. Because we need to move away from this. This is too complicated. This is too much. So they moved. The problem was this man who followed her on social media still had power. And so what happened then is that followed her to her new school. And it continued to break her apart. See, the problem was that she made this one decision. And we could get hard on her right now. And we could sit here in this space and say, you know what? Like, she really shouldn't have done that. Or even, like, more importantly, we could say, he really shouldn't have done that. And even we can look at those people and say, at the schools, they shouldn't have done that. They should have let her back in. But what happens is this happened again. And they go to this new school, and this entire thing is on repeat. Picture gets leaked. And what's terrible, as if this was not enough, is that the family picks up everything again and moves to another area. And this happens for a third time. This is a terrible, terrible situation. That one decision that was made led to this girl getting bullied to the max. If you guys think that your words don't matter, they do. Because I tend to think that if this happened and people were around her that loved her and that acted her the same nonetheless, that maybe she could have gotten through that. But because the reality was she went to school and everybody picked on her and everybody said terrible, terrible, unspeakable things about her. Because the reality is, the words you say and the things that you communicate matter. She ends up in this relationship in this new place, and it goes south, and then he starts using this momentum of everybody around her to even thrash her even worse. I mean, this is like terrible. And then she decides that she is not worth anything. That she can't keep doing this. And so she tries to take her life. And the paramedics save her, and they bring her out of this. And then people find out and continue to tease her. I mean, seriously, like, dude, is there any end in this story? Is there any time that this will end? Will people maybe just look away for a moment and just love this young girl? There was chance after chance after chance after chance for this young girl. But people continued to communicate in terrible ways, and they continued to tear her apart. And as if this was not enough, she made this video, and on October 10th, 2012, she decided to take her life. And this time she was successful. That she took her life because she did not feel worth it anymore. That she did not feel like she could continue to live life in this world because nobody even gave her a chance. That people continued to hit her over and over. I hope you feel the pain in this story. And I'm not making this up. This is a real story that happened because people did not be good stewards with the ability to communicate. Guys, we have a choice. God has given you a tongue to communicate to people in this world. And you have a choice to build people up or to stick people down. It talks about in James chapter 3, James writes to us and tells us that our mouth is like a small rudder on a boat. You may have heard this before. That there's this giant boat above the water. And there's this little tiny rudder, this thing that steers the boat. And if this thing turns underneath the water, this entire boat shifts directions. That there's this giant boat above the water, and this small rudder determines the course of this entire boat. That in fact, our tongue is rather similar. That we have a choice in how we live in this world. That although our tongue is small, like the rudder, our tongue is powerful. Our tongue can tear people down or lift people up. We have the power to do amazing things, or we have the power to do terrible things. And I guess what I'm asking you tonight is, what are you going to do with the tongue that God has given you? What are you going to choose to communicate to this world? Because quite simply, it's a choice. And you can walk out of here saying, I will continue to joke in bad ways. I will continue to gossip and tear these people down. Or you can walk out of here saying, I am choosing as a Christ follower to use my tongue in powerful ways. To lift people up. To encourage people. To continue to push people to a relationship with Jesus. Guys, your tongue is powerful. Communication is powerful. So can we, as a group of students in Elk Grove, choose to be arm in arm in this? That we will link hands and say, we are choosing to be careful communicators. That we are choosing to be good stewards with this opportunity to communicate to other people. As I think about this story, I think about so many parts of this story never had to happen. But because people continue to tear her down, it turned into a terrible, terrible, terrible situation and a domino effect. So guys, as we bow our heads tonight, I ask that you think about this. Think about how you use your words and how you communicate to other people. Can you choose to be a careful communicator? Can you choose to be a good steward in the way that you use social media, in the way that you use your phone, in the way that you communicate to those around you? Will you bow your heads with me? God, in this space, we want to lift ourselves up to you. God, that we can link hands in this time and say, as a community, we will come together and we will choose to be careful communicators in this world. That we will use social media, that we will use our text messages, that everything we do and say and act out, that everything that we do and communicate in this world, we do it in a way that reflects you. God, that we will not be people that gossip, that instead we will be people that share the story of Jesus. God, we love you. In your name we pray. Amen. You guys are dismissed.